The Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH, proudly presents its closing program for the 2022 Black History Month Virtual Festival. All month long, we have brought you a variety of programs supporting this year's theme, Black Health and Wellness. This program will feature a compilation of highlights from the month-long celebration featuring clips from all of our featured programs. But first, we will hear Lift Every Voice and Sing, brought to us from the 105 Voices, arranged by Roland M. Carter. Afterwards, we will hear from the ASALH National President, Dr. W. Marvin Dulaney, to share his thoughts on this year's theme.
Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing. Till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of grace. Lift every voice and sing. The stars the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Lift every voice and sing. Sing a song. Sing a song. Lift every voice and sing a song. Facing the rising sun. Oh, new day begun. Let us march on. Let us march on. Till victory is won. Story the rolling shine, into the streets we shine, out in the trees by sun, learn the shine, and with the steady sheet, up the sea we saw, until the days watch us all, sing our song. We have come, oh we have come, oh we have the tears of imposter, oh we have come. Standing up and the Lord of the slaughter, out of the glory past, till now we stand at last, where the one clean our soul is cast. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Let's all feet straight from the bases of our very best being. Let's all jump in the wine of the world we forget. Shadow beneath our hands. May we forever stand.
Hello, I'm Marvin Dulaney, President of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, commonly called ASALH. I am proud to announce the Black History Month theme for 2022. This year's theme for Black History Month is Black Health and Wellness. ASALH has celebrated Negro History Week and Black History Month for 95 years, and rarely has one of its themes for the annual celebrations been more appropriate and timely. Our nation has suffered through 2 years of a worldwide pandemic called the coronavirus, or COVID-19. Almost 1 million Americans have died during the pandemic. Although the administration of President Joseph R. Biden has made a valiant effort to curtail and stem the spread of the coronavirus by distributing a vaccine, the incompetence and lies about the virus of the previous administration and its supporters have set the tone for many Americans to resist being vaccinated and stemming its deadly spread. African Americans have suffered disproportionately from COVID-19. The theme of Black health and wellness also addresses the long history of how African Americans have dealt with their exclusion from the nation's hospitals and clinics. African Americans have had to establish their own hospitals, clinics, medical and nursing schools in cities such as Charleston, Chicago, Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. This theme also shows how some of the nation's most important medical and scientific innovations were developed because African Americans in slavery and freedom were used literally as guinea pigs to help to develop the field of gynecology, to research cancer and polio, and the spread of syphilis. But all has not been negative. African Americans have contributed many medical and scientific innovations to the nation's health and wellness. For example, in 1721, during a smallpox outbreak in Boston, Onesimus, an enslaved African, taught his master the method of inoculation. In 1893, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, a surgeon at Chicago's Providence Hospital, performed the first successful open heart surgery. During World War II, Dr. Charles Drew developed a method for preserving blood plasma that has saved millions of lives. Most recently, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett led the team of scientists that developed the vaccine to immunize Americans against COVID-19. The theme of Black health and wellness not only addresses the history of healthcare in the African American community, it is also a historical examination of the financial and economic health and wellness of African Americans. Broadening and expanding the theme to address what some historians and healthcare professionals call the social and economic determinants of health and wellness allows us to show the interconnectedness of a number of historical, social, and economic factors on Black health and wellness.
Blessings on today. Please join me as we pray. Almighty God, we come today in gratitude for your goodness in our life. We thank you for your mercy, for your kindness, and we thank you, Lord God, for your consistent and unwavering presence. for the commitment that you have shown us through the years. We say thank you. Today we stand in awe of how you've orchestrated our lives and how you have brought us from the margins into the mainstream of life and service. We honor the mission of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and we stand in solidarity with their goals of supporting and strengthening the Black family. For the life of Carter G. Woodson, we say thank you. We're grateful for those who worked with him and for those who have come after him.
Historically, African Americans have been perceived as inherent of racial deficiencies, and any disease-causing factors have mostly been considered as racial rather than social or economic. Throughout our history, in comparison to other communities, African Americans in particular have been disproportionately represented in terms of high morbidity and mortality rates. There's been a persistent need to clarify the health inequalities in the differential exposure to risk factors for African Americans. So today our panel will explore these health disparities in much more detail. Okay, so let's begin. Dr. Newsome, can you please start us off with defining what is meant by the term racial health disparities?
Yes, the theme I'm very pleased and honored to participate in this panel. I've been a member of ASALH for more than 40 years, and there's only one other organization I've been a member of for longer. That's the medical profession. So I'm glad to share my thoughts. Generally, I want to remind us that the ASALH theme this year is African American health and wellness. So it's somewhat paradoxical that today we're talking not about our health and wellness, but we're talking about what we consider to be the opposite, our ill health, period. But by the subject of health disparities, we, both lay people and medical people, tend to think of African Americans as suffering from diseases and disorders more frequently compared to whites, from having more severe manifestations compared to whites, and also having a shorter life expectancy compared to whites. And the causes are multifactorial. They are partly vestiges of slavery and discrimination, and partly a response, partly self-neglect and self-abuse confronted with the economic problems and social problems and depression, and partly a result of distrust of the medical establishment.
Medicalization of race for our audience today, Constance?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you for that question. I want to backtrack a little bit and dovetail off what Dr. Newsome has shared regarding, just the slave trade experience. I don't think we can really talk about medicalization of Black bodies without really looking at how Black bodies and the mistreatment and or treatment of it was weaponized to continue slavery.
But I'm really thinking about this theme, Black bodies from exploitation to excellence. And initially, some of the panelists and I had a conversation about this, and we said, well, the exploitation is still going on. And so for me, it was thinking historically, how do you contextualize a moment where excellence is at the center? And so what I wanted to do was really speak to the contributions of African peoples to medical discovery, to public health campaigns that have quite literally saved the lives of all of us.
I I knew that something was wrong on this particular day. All of a sudden, he began to sob. He was sobbing uncontrollably. And he said to me, as a child, 5 years old, I was experimented on. I was experimented on with radiation.
They had a little round beanie they put on our heads, and then two girls stood behind a LED screen, and they pushed a button, and it seemed like I saw some flashes. And she told the other nurse, "Oh my God, I'm giving him too much."
What I found interesting, though, and then among academia, the receptions were missed. Some people thought it was wonderful. Some people were thought that I indeed had taken a perspective that had never been taken and that needed to be taken, and I had essentially done what I set out to do, which was correct the canon of the history of medicine, which has carefully elided the experience of African Americans and corrected it. But then there were people who doubted it, and then lay people I found interesting seemed to just love it. I mean, they were thirsty for this kind of book because it corroborated things that they already knew. They had personally experienced it. Their families had felt it. They had lived through it. They had oral histories passed down. And so it was a huge relief to them to have someone validate and say, yes, this actually happened and I can prove it. So we had that mixed response at first. As time went on, people warmed to the book. I was getting a lot more positive response than negative, but you're right. When the pandemic struck, it gained a second life. Many people who had not read it before did. Sales skyrocketed alarmingly at first. And I think people are ready for this work. They are ready to understand that questioning the history of medicine canon is not the same thing as disparaging medicine or disparaging that. The conceptual process is hard for me to delineate because the truth is I have a million things I want to write about and I can't do that, right? But the things that I ultimately invest time and energy and my passion in tend to have something important in common. I sometimes see developments in medicine or health that seem to be, if not countenanced, then widely accepted, maybe passively accepted, but accepted. But I don't find them acceptable. And more to the point, I know that it's my opinion, no one is explaining these things intelligibly to lay people. Doctors and scientists and ethicists will discuss them at length, decide that it's appropriate to do them, but nobody's consulted the people who are going to ultimately pay the price. The patients, the subject. They don't even know what they tend to read are versions that, in my opinion, are bowdlerized and sanitized. For example, tremendously risky research that is performed without anybody asking your opinion, but it's presented to you as a cutting edge, new development that you are lucky enough to be one of the first to participate in. No, it's not. You're asking me to be a research subject and you're serving the needs of other people, but you're not being told that. I just felt that not explaining to people clearly what's transpiring is the same thing as lying to people. And so with Deadly Monopolies, which I'm so happy you mentioned that, in some ways it's really my favorite book, and yet few people have read it. Capitalism has got a great deal to do with the problems we're facing today, including racial healthcare disparities, but also including the things like, in this country, white people and just like Black people cannot afford their medications. Why? So I wanted to look behind the curtain and find out how the patent system has catalyzed this complete this utter separation of people from the drugs they need. At the same time, it's telling people that the system is what allows them to have medication. So I wanted to elucidate things for everyday people. They could make their own decisions about whether the things transpiring are correct or safe or things they want to be a part of or not. I see far too little accommodation for informing people of the realities they need to know to make decisions, or hiding things from people that if they understood completely, they would probably rise up and insist that things change. I just wanted to be that person who's like, speaking for people who don't have a voice and explaining things to people in a way that I think is more honest and useful than what they're used to hearing.
I would like to acknowledge that this year's festival is dedicated to the memory of our friend and brother, Mr. Edgar Brookins. He was a tremendous supporter of ASALH, and he is truly missed. At this time, we will have the annual presentation of the commemorative Black Heritage Stamp. The Black Heritage Stamp series is the longest running commemorative stamp series in United States history.
I was practically driven to Rome in order to obtain the opportunities for art culture.
In terms of talking about what African Americans have contributed to medical science and health and wellness in this country.
When Black nurses showed up to educate, to vaccinate, and to inform our community, no one said, "So who are you?" Because we were there before the pandemic and we'll be there after the pandemic. Thank you.
We have to be clear that race and ethnicity are not proxies for biology. Let me say that again. Race and ethnicity are not.
It's becoming more apparent that the oral cavity has to be addressed. You can't just pass by the oral cavity and go to the throat and then address the rest of the body.
And we were so successful at CDU in terms of doing over 80,000 tests in our community last year during the summer. This is why it's so important that when people in our community look at the healthcare system, they see faces like ours.
7 out of every 10 jobs in America touches healthcare in one form or another. Healthcare is the largest business in the United States. We don't like to say it, but it's true.
I see. I see a question. What were some of the psychological considerations in making a decision of whether to self-liberate?
Excellent question.
Excellent question. We talk about psychology much differently in the West than we do in other cultures. In the West, psychology is much more of an abstract concept that is not nearly as interwoven with your everyday life. And the idea of self-liberating as a slave, it was to me very simple and not really psychological. It was a matter of being free. You had been free. In your country, you may have been poor. You may have not been, but you had been free. And to not be free is what added the psychological twist. To be free was not the psychology. To not be free, it's what it added, because it added trauma that you still see. Regina, Ben?
Yeah, Regina?
One of the things that I saw, keeping in mind, I came into athletic training in the late 70s, early 80s, not only with the collegiate side of it, but also with the professional side. From the professional side, there is no lack of support for the players in terms of injuries. From the personnel, the trainers, the doctors, the rehabilitation aspect of it. When I first came in the league, there was a lot of soft tissue injuries that you know, along with fractures and concussions. But the big thing that I saw is the training aspect has changed over the years. From the early years, a lot of times.
One of the things, when I came in the league, that's when the conditioning part really started to play into each team. In 81, they started, then in my year, 82, that's when we start now, conditioning started year round, or you start in March. Now it's year round, you know. The medical side of it, there's a lot more studying being done or has been done to update these doctors and these trainers and physical therapists and the medical field, where now, you know, you're using video, you're using science to really kind of pinpoint how these injuries are happening.
The conversation is fluid. It's ongoing, and quite frankly, it had a lot to do with our selection of agent and the process. In each of the presentations from the agents that we even considered, they had to show us from A to Z of their process of getting him from the end of a season, which, you know, my son had the good fortune of playing at a school that literally won the national championship 4 out of the 5 years he was in school. So with that, he's always had an extended year. You know, he would be playing into January. So in terms of getting him ready for all of the All-Star game, Senior Bowl was, you know, at the beginning of last month. And then we go from there, well, this month, I mean, then we go from there to getting ready for the combine, and knowing that how important medicals were going to be at the combine. The first thing I asked them was, what is their process?
It's a lot longer than anticipated. First off, you know, just it was encouraging hearing Mr. Tazim talk about, you know, the bond between his son, because a lot of us, you know, we were all first generation, right? We're first generation. And so we didn't have the experience. We didn't have somebody walking us through this process, telling us what to look out for, how, even sitting down with an agent, knowing what questions to ask. How do you differentiate between what services this agent is offering and what, you know, preparing your child to be successful, not just getting into the NFL, but it's being successful in extending that career past that first and second contract, and then even afterwards. So it's great to hear. I was very encouraged to hear that. When I went down, again, it was, you know, the average NFL career is 3 years. Mine was in that 3 years, 3 games, right? It was in that time frame where I just got the benefits. My rookie contract is coming to a close. I'm the starting running back, and we're talking about a multi-year, you know, contract. And it was hard because it was in that contract year. You lose the leverage for negotiating. I was told the timetable was 8 to 12 months, but then it ended up having a few complications with infections and different things like that. And so that window extended, but it was tough. And to the panelists' points on this call, the fortunate thing that I did was have a team of experts outside of the actual team, right? When I was released from Washington, I relied on the team that I had developed outside, who really knew me, who knew my body, could make other recommendations on how to get back. And that's what I really relied on in that process.
And let me chime in on that too, because and that's a person Coach Jack was talking about draft, but you got the current player, and the term he keep using, can't make the club in the tub. You have to understand, our off days as players is Tuesdays. And if you go to the facility on Tuesday to train, to rehab, to do whatever you're going to do, if you go to the facility, there's a plane full of people, athletes, getting off the plane to work out for this particular team for your position, right? So if you go into the training room, if you got hurt in the game Sunday, you best believe they flying 2 or 3 cornerbacks in there to run 40s in the train, to whether or not you're going to make it back for Sunday, or whether or not you're going to be on this particular ball club by next game. So every Tuesday, you got a plane, all 16, now 17 weeks on Tuesday, you got a plane full of guys getting off that plane to work out for 32 different teams.
As part of the 2022 Black History Month virtual festival, ASALH sponsored 3 days of book talks in which 15 authors discussed their books. The authors covered a broad range of topics that spoke to financial, physical, mental, and emotional health that affect African Americans in the past and today. A few of the intriguing books that were discussed over the course of the month included titles such as An Afro-Caribbean in the Nazi Era, Generations of Freedom, Gender Movement and Violence in Natchez, A Parenting Guide, Empowering Children is the Way to Go, Culturally Competent Nursing, and An African American Philosophy of Medicine, just to name a few. If you missed any of the author book talk programs, you can always view them on ASALH TV's channel located on YouTube. Today's event is being brought to us by our sponsors, and we would like to acknowledge them at this time. Our legacy sponsors, our heritage sponsors, our history makers sponsors, our preservation sponsors, our hero sponsors, our champion sponsors, and our media sponsors. Please make a commitment to support ASALH. Your memberships and generous donations will help us preserve the rich legacy of Dr. Carter G. Woodson and will assist ASALH in carrying out their mission of promoting, researching, interpreting, and disseminating information about Black life, history, and culture to the global community. Continue to watch ASALH TV throughout the year for programming that highlights the illustrious history of the African American experience. Tune in next month for another author event with our partners at PBS Books, featuring Dr. Sandro Galea as he discusses his book, The Contagion, next time. Attend local and regional events around the country sponsored by ASALH branches. Each year, ASALH hosts a national conference that brings together historians, educators, students, community builders, and others who share an abiding interest in learning about the contribution of African Americans to this nation and the world. This year's conference will be held September 29th through October the 1st, 2022 in Montgomery, Alabama. Please mark your calendars for these upcoming events and keep checking the ASALH website for updates on local, regional, and national programs.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. We'll cry glory. Oh, glory. We'll cry glory. Oh, glory.
Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon. Formed against, yes, glory is destined. Every day, women and men become legends. Since they go against our skin, become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is just a position in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. Once I die, the spirit is revisiting us. Truly living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down and we stand up. Shots be on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. We'll cry glory. We'll cry glory. When we get there, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory. Now the war is not over. Victory is not won, but we'll fight on to the finish. When it's all done, we'll cry glory. When we get there, we'll cry glory. Ooh, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory. We'll cry glory. When we get there, we'll cry glory. Oh, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory.
Selma is now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. We marched with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy was lethal when King became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald eagle. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing. Our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in a dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of my Lord, my eyes have seen the glory.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, you and me will be sure. You and me will be sure. We'll cry glory. We'll cry glory. Oh, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory. We'll cry glory. We'll cry glory. When we get there, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory.
There's a great committee. There's a great committee. Meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't you get weary. Just walk together, children, don't you get weary. There's a great meeting in the promised land. Gonna walk and never tire. 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 There's a great meeting in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children, don't you get weary. Walk on, my children, don't Don't you get weary, just don't walk together, children. Don't you get weary, there's a great competing in the promised land. Gonna sing, gonna never tire. Sing and 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 never tire. There's a great competing in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Walk on, my children. Don't you get weary. Just don't walk together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great competing in the promised land. Gonna shout, shout and never tire. 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 There's a great competing in the promised land. Oh, walk together, children. Don't you get weary. Sing all, my children. Don't you get weary. Just a shout together, children. Don't you get weary. There's a great competing. There's a great competing. There's a great competing in the promised land. Now In the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's been anchored in the in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Before my stay in hell one day, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. I sing and pray myself away. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Wanna shout and pray and never stop. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, until I reach the mountain top. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, good Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Do you love him? Oh yes. Do you love him? Hallelujah. Do you love him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Are you anchored? Oh yes. Yes, I'm yes. Anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Yes. Will you serve him? Will you serve him? Oh yes. Will you serve him? Hallelujah. Will you serve him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Are you anchored? Oh yes. Yes, I'm yes. Anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Hallelujah. Will you praise him? Will you praise him? Oh yes. Will you praise him? Hallelujah. Will you praise him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Yes, I'm anchored. Lord, I'm anchored. Oh yes.